So, if we take a look at human rights in Serbia, there are some data that I would like to share before we dive into the part of this podcast episode in which we will comment this human rights and the situation of human rights in Serbia. Ksenia, did you know that more than 80% of Serbian citizens believe that the state does not provide adequate health care? As many as 91% of citizens believe that the state fights against domestic violence ineffectively. And last year alone, 25 women were killed in domestic violence. And this is a data that we know from unofficial sources because the official data doesn't exist on this topic. That's how important Serbian state finds femicide. And while 69% of citizens believe that LGBTQ plus people should have the same rights as all other citizens of Serbia, only 47% of them believe that Serbia should adopt a law on same-sex unions. That would definitely, legally regulate a whole range of rights for this community in Serbia. More than 70% of citizens believe that their personal data is not adequately protected on the internet, and over 80% of them believe that hate speech is present in public sphere. This is something that you can actually come across every day, whether you consume media or you talk to your neighbor. This is something that most of the Serbian people will tell you. Today, in this episode of Youth Squad, with me here is Ksenia, a citizen of Serbia, as well as a human rights activist who is very passionate to talk about these topics, which I know from experience. So, hello Ksenia, welcome to this episode of Youth Squad. How are you?
Hi Maria. Well, I was fine, but then you hit me with all of the statistics and now I'm kind of depressed.
Well, isn't this the reality you live in Serbia?
Yeah, but somehow when you live in this sort of situation and in these circumstances, you get used to it, which is so messed up. But hearing statistics of 90% people, that's a lot of people. I don't think that many citizens of Serbia ever agreed on anything, ever.
But this is the statistics are based on the research that was done on the sample of 10,000 people. So it's not like the whole Serbia, but I think.
But it's still very representative.
Mm-hmm. That's what I thought as well, because from what I read in other sources as well, it was kind of similar thing, and you can have some statistics based on, for example, what the opinion is of Serbian citizens on LGBTQ rights or on healthcare and stuff, but this is the one that I found that it's more general and just kind of sees the picture as a whole. So I have a first question to ease you on this very difficult topic, and I completely agree with you that this is not easy to hear, but let's dive in slowly. What was the last thing you read in newspapers which you found shocking?
So I don't read newspapers.
Yes, okay.
Media.
Media.
Yeah, I know what you meant. You don't have to do this.
I'm sorry.
But it was actually a few days ago when I read that there was the 11th femicide of this year, and that the girl was 16-year-old. So that's a kid. I mean, and that shocked me, and I was just like, Jesus. How long is this going to last? And it's going to last forever.
So it's 11th femicide in Serbia, and it's only April.
Yeah. And this was a 16-year-old kid. And then after that, I read that the approximate sentence of femicide
perpetrators,
is 10 to 15 years.
Oh my God. So basically
you took a life of a 16-year-old and you're going to be in jail less than she was alive, which is...
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really heavy.
And that's messed up, but that's our justice system.
So, your opinion on justice system in Serbia is that it doesn't do proper work?
Yes. It doesn't do proper work in many spheres, and there's quite a big issue with following the rule of law as it is.
Implementing the laws that exist as well.
Yeah, but also within the structural justice system, there's a lot of corruption, a lot of shady, under the table deals to get what you want, and it's just so messed up. But it's not adequate. It doesn't protect its citizens, which is kind of my main issue with our justice system. We see that every year with Pride. We see this with these sort of cases. We see all of this with like hate speech not being punished or fined. We see this every day when like a newspaper puts out a dumb lie and does not get fined for it. So just the justice system does not do its job. It's not adequate enough.
Yeah, even when there are mechanisms that are they're supposed to serve against these struggles. For example, disinformation in the media, or let's talk about disinformation in the media. For example, we in Serbia there is bodies, sometimes even like independent bodies that are supposed to take care of these things, but they are not doing the work that they do. Regulatory body for electronic media in Serbia receives more than I don't know how many reports every year, but they don't do anything about it. They still tend to give and did give national frequencies to the televisions that actually broke and breached the code of ethics many times, and that are doing things completely against the rules, and are still receiving huge attention from the audience, because they are presented with the opportunity to be on national frequencies and actually do whatever they want to do with the time that they have, and it's such a dangerous thing.
Yeah, and we see that with the fact that no independent, I say that very lightly, no independent or sort of,
she's air quoting as well.
Yeah, I'm air quoting, or not even anti-government, but sort of like anti-oppositional TV or media got any national frequency. Even more, certain like internet providers don't let you stream that TV channel. So it's just so messed up. And the fact that so this was like last year, right, when they awarded these national frequencies.
Yeah.
There was this big...
It was the end of last year.
That independent media channel, they had this big protests in a sense, and they pointed out all the like breakings of those codex rules that the other TV did, and yet nothing happened.
No, it's quite a public secret, so to say. It's quite known to all of the people, not only the informed elite of Serbia. It's known to the all the layers of Serbian society, that some televisions that that all of the televisions that are awarded with the national frequencies do not actually do the job that the public service should do, which is inform objectively on the topics that are happening in the world or in the country in this case. So it's quite sad to see that people's power is ignored in such a way.
Is it sad or expected? I mean, it can be both, but it can be both, and I think it is both.
But why do you think it's expected? What do you mean by that?
I mean by the fact that we've seen this trend rise for like years. So the first rise we saw during the US elections in like 2016.
You mean like globally we see these trends?
We see it globally, but we saw it in Serbia too. So whenever we see it in the fact, so even our elections, there's quite a big disparity on how much opposition is allowed to be on national TV as opposed to like the current ruling party. I'm trying not to say names.
No. I mean, yes, but like it's quite how to say, visible that the pro-regime media actually is financed, by the ruling party in Serbia right now. So it's quite, they're not trying to hide it. It's quite obvious that the president of Serbia is quite present in the media, much more than his the people who oppose him. So
that's what I'm trying to say. That's not unexpected, because it's been that way since like 2014 or whatever.
But what do you think is the cause? Do you think media literacy can solve this type of thing, or something else?
I can't decide. So media literacy, I do think, is necessary, and we see this sort of. There's this website like Fake News Watcher or something.
It's like
But yeah, but
platforms that like
independent website run by two guys in Novi Sad. You know what I mean? And I think that they are the ones trying to sort of break all of these news when teach maybe people media literacy because they can teach you, here's how you find out that a news is fake and blah blah blah. But
or just manipulated with. I mean, sometimes even there doesn't have to be complete disinformation about something in order for the news to be harmful. Sometimes there are news that we see and interact with and also like, you know, take in without thinking that okay, it's not complete lie, but you know, it's manipulated with, it's spinned, you know, it's spun or something, you know, like someone was messing with this news and showed you only one side of it.
Yeah. So I don't think in that sense, I think media literacy is necessary for young people, but I do not think that it will solve a much bigger, much more national, much more even international issue, because that issue is more about money, more about funding, and no matter how smart I am, I'm not rich, so I can't solve it. But the point is that these fake news, this sort of media, that's a lot of money. That's just money on money on money and a lot of power.
It's profit oriented, which leads to power. Yes, and
it's a lot of power. And people,
how does it affect the human rights? How does it affect human rights in Serbia?
Well, we saw that actually. I'm gonna take like the latest example, which was Pride this year. So this year it was Euro Pride in 2022. So last year. So before Euro Pride, media started talking about this foreign pride that is coming to Serbia with like foreign, how do you say, plaćenici?
The people who get money from foreign resources.
Yeah, but basically they tried to like spin the story of like, this is in Serbia and it's like, oh, it's gonna last 7 days, which Pride Week has been an integral part of Pride for like years. So
yeah, it's always lasted for that amount of days.
But now this was like, oh, because it's European, it's gonna last 7 days, and they're gonna take our children, and they're gonna
introduce all these new activities that are gonna.
Yeah, they're like, I remember one. So during those anti-Pride protests, one of the points was like, they're gonna steal the National Theater, and I was like, what? So because there was a premiere at the National Theater during Pride Week, they're gonna like, oh, we're not giving up our National Theater.
So this to the narrative of you know, like a threat that's coming from somewhere outside, it's coming our way, is actually quite damaging towards certain groups of our society. You know, it's quite affecting human rights, position of human rights in Serbia.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna point. So basically, like during this period, when we saw this rise in news, in the media, this sort of theory that everything foreign is bad, actually, like more hate crimes in cases of hate speech were like, so between the period of July till the end of September, it was like twice the amount of cases of hate crimes as opposed to like 2021, the whole year. So that's like, you can see that this sort of media, this sort of rhetoric actually impacts the lives of people.
Regular people who don't just want to live a life.
Yeah, and then you get like, I don't know, you get like death threats, you get there were like physical problems, like physical altercations. Yeah. Which is so you see that this media campaign, this spinning, this rhetoric that they're pushing is so harmful that it actually endangers people.
And what do institutions do about this?
Nothing.
Like, okay, yes, institutions that we talk about now, like is police, human rights protectors and stuff, but there are also independent institutions, like independent bodies that exist in order to protect human rights. And in Serbia, Commissioner for Protection of Equality exists. What is their, realm of responsibility, and how can they affect the improvement of human rights in Serbia?
So basically, the commissioner, the main thing with that I have is they cannot sue people. So basically,
they cannot represent people like
in court. No, I'll tell you the process. Okay. So you have the commissioner, and then you, as an individual or an organization, you fill out like a form or whatever. Report. Yeah, report is the word. And you hand it in, and they look over it, and they're like, yeah, okay, this is hate crime or it's not. And then the commissioner doesn't really have that much power. I mean, love her, she's the best, but she does not have that much power. So all that she can do is like look over your report and be like, yeah, this is hate crime, or no, this isn't, and
give you a piece of advice, basically.
Just like confirm, but she's not the court. She doesn't decide. So she decides it's for herself and for you to know, and then she sends it back to you, and then you can take that person, entity, whatever, to court with her backing opinion. But she doesn't she's not the judge. She doesn't really. She can't sentence someone or fine someone.
Understand.
So she's just sort of there to decide whether this is bad or this is good. Kind of like the moral police.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's not go there. I mean, I understand. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely the problem is, beside the media spreading the harmful rhetoric, is that the fact that the institutions that are put in place to regulate this stuff don't actually do their jobs, or even if they wanted to, they're not allowed to, because lawfully they're not just able to.
Yeah, it's not even that they're not allowed to, it's just that they're not given enough power to do their job as it should be done. And this is a thing, it's the fact that in Serbia, you have to rely on independent institutions and independent organizations. That just bothers me so much, because
NGOs, civil society?
So civil society, yeah. But state institutions exist for a reason, to protect their citizens and to serve their citizens. And when they don't do that, that's so mind-boggling. It's so what are you supposed to do? For example, so we are introduced to the civil society, right? But not everybody is, especially people outside of Belgrade. They don't know that they can ask for
outside of major cities, definitely.
Yeah. So some person doesn't know that if something is happening to them, they might not know that it's bad. So they might not know what hate speech is. They don't know that they can report it. They can get legal help, psychological, that there's systems in place that aren't state funded.
That, I mean, taxpayers are paying for in the end. I mean, you're not taking anything that's given to you for free. You're actually, if you're citizens of Serbia, most likely you're paying for these services. Most likely you are someone who's funding these processes and mechanisms and stuff, and you should use them because they serve you in the end, or it's supposed to serve you. Yeah, it's supposed to be that way. So, I mean, we tackled already a couple of things, but I want to circle back to the pride and what you mentioned about, media swirling and spinning and, creating this environment in which queer people are not welcome. But not only queer people, women as well. It's quite known that, misogyny and homophobia actually go hand in hand, and, these type of things are just quite tied to each other. There's one example that I read about that I find really interesting, is that when the bishop, Nicanor, I believe, did say something quite discriminatory against the LGBTQ plus community during that atmosphere period you told me about, prior to Europride. He actually even mentioned using, weapons like legit violence against the participants of the Pride Parade. He was actually, I obviously the first thing that I had in mind is this is against the law. In a sense, there is law that prohibits discrimination in Serbia. And what I was completely shocked, and I believe still
am. I told you?
Yes, basically, yes. Now, yeah, I remember it now. You did tell me about it. You were the one that told me about it. So basically, for our listeners to kind of like get them into the story, church representatives are exempt from the law that prohibits discrimination. So basically, anything that goes along with the church beliefs. Yes, I mean it's quite subjective, you know. Like
it's quite subjective. But yeah, it's in the article. Like this isn't a made up thing. It's literally like
it's
in the law. In the law against discrimination. It's like
it's shocking.
Church representatives.
And you know, like somebody who was, you know, creating this draft that was after that adopted as a law, you know, was thinking, you know, let's write the law that prohibits any type of discrimination, but let's put, you know, the church here as a, you know, as a part of our society that doesn't really fall under any type of system that we have put in. And
I was gonna say that really doesn't do anything, but whatever.
Doesn't do. The church doesn't do anything.
But yeah, and on top of
what
that,
is the effect of church? I mean, if they don't do anything, what do you think that they do? I mean, like, what is the effect church and church religion?
Control.
Okay, so like we're talking about Serbia, which is quite religious. You know, people in Serbia are quite religious. So the effect that church representatives have on the society is quite seen and quite visible. Yeah,
mass control. And I think. So this is just proof or whatever that people and the government forget that we are supposed to be a secular state. State and church are supposed to be separated, which in Serbia does not happen. I mean, it happens, but like the Serbian Orthodox Church gets a ton of funding from the state. They're very highly regarded. They're like, on every big holiday, it's like, here, have a 2-hour live stream of the church. I mean, and they are quite good at manipulating the story. So that priest that you mentioned, the bishop, he was like, oh, I would use weapons if I had them. But then it was like, it's fine because he doesn't have them. And it's like, no, that's not how it works.
Because he was saying that to the masses, that he doesn't know who they are, you know.
Maybe the masses have weapons,
yes.
You know what I mean?
I mean, masses usually do, and it's quite dangerous. And even if they didn't, still, you know, thinking about using the weapons against someone just because they're practicing, again, something that's guaranteed by law, you know, like something like pride is guaranteed by law in Serbia.
But I'm going to remind you that the whole thing over Europride started because of the church. They organized the first protest, right? The prayer walks, whatever.
So like for the safety of Serbia.
Yeah, and they were like, you're not going to steal our kids. It's like, nobody wants your kids. But it's like, I think they were behind the first few protests. But even so, even if they weren't, they never condemned them. In fact, they were like speakers on it, like church representatives.
They were quite religiously motivated, yes.
Yeah, and I'm going to, like, any political situation that happens, the church is like, oh, prayer walk. Like the whole, so now in the media, there was this big talk about the Kosovo agreement, the German, France, whatever agreement. And once again, the church was out every Saturday walking for Kosovo. It's like, what are you trying to do? But it does work because the church is really visible.
I mean, it's quite dangerous, and it's quite important to raise awareness about this. It's like not talking against any religion. It's not talking about this religious tolerance that has to exist in any society. It's just about, you know, what you mentioned, a state being a secular state, and if it was made to be a secular state, you know, some human rights have to be in power of you know, the laws and the system that was, you know, implemented in the state, and that has to exist in order for the state to, you know, be sustainable.
But do you know what I found really interesting about the church? So the church doesn't accept gay people, but the church accepts trans people. Oh, which is quite like interesting to me. Even like this
in Serbia, the Serbian
Orthodox Church accepts trans people. So in 2019, this, I don't know the hierarchy of the church, but the archbishop, like someone near the top, not the patriarch. No, I don't know the words, but like someone on the top of the church, actually like performed a baptism once again when a trans man finished his transition. So the church is very accepting of trans people, but they don't accept like homosexuality, bisexuality, queer.
It's as if they need a scapegoat for something. You know, sometimes I feel like, especially in Serbia, that certain waves are created, political waves and social waves, in order to, you know, just draw our attention to something else in that moment. And if the scapegoat is the LGBT community, let it be. You know, like, it's just, you know, I mean, not let it be in a sense, but like, I believe that it's quite often used as a scapegoat.
Yeah. I was like convinced that last year when the whole thing over Europride started, when the whole state was fighting, I was convinced that like we were gonna be like, yeah, Kosovo is independent. And I was convinced that the whole mess over Europride, it was just a distraction for the people to kind of pass this other law very secretly and just sort of unnoticeably.
Because some laws were passed during that time, and you know, like many things that were quite controversial at the moment were quite under the veil of secrecy, because people were focused on something else, and in that sense it was Europride. So I mean, I read some articles about it, and it's quite actually supported the view on the situation at the time. But how is I mean, the most recent holiday in Serbia was Easter, and during the Easter period, church representatives, one especially, he mentioned that gender-sensitive language is actually something that negatively affects the family, form of family, or the idea of family in Serbia. And this way, he directly, I mean, ask him, not me. You know, like maybe in the next episode, I can invite him in. But like, you know, the idea of you know, having equality, and that's damaging our reality and the family, the idea of family and the idea of peace that we know as such. You know, it's quite harmful. Again, I mean, it's quite dangerous. Quite nonsense in its own, but also quite harmful. Doesn't matter that it's nonsense. People still, you know, listen to these things, and maybe subconsciously also are influenced with it. By it.
Also, like, the timing of that man is impeccable. Like during the holiday, when all eyes are on church, when people are like, so there's people that go to church only on holidays, which means that more people are objectively paying attention to what the church is saying. And he comes out and he's like, and it's like, how does the gender-sensitive language even impact the family? And I'm going to tell you. I ask my questions and answer them. So basically,
you're a perfect guest.
I know. So basically, I think that that this patriarchal system that and the society that we've lived in for centuries is now sort of, women are starting to actually fight against it, like, very loudly. It's not that they haven't fought before, but now it's like,
but it is a fact,
in a legal way we're trying to achieve something. Even when this like gender sensitive language, there was a law on like gender equality, and so there's a lot of like, now legal things are changing and women are getting more recognized and they're getting more power, which once again does not, the big man isn't gonna like it. So whatever man, the point is, it's a man that feels threatened. So a male priest, a male attorney, a president, whatever, a male president. I wasn't gonna say it, but yeah.
But I mean, Serbia does have a male president, so avoid the obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this gender-sensitive language is now endangering them. They feel, so men are so fragile that they feel that language can threaten them, which it can, because now legal documents are getting changed to like fit female forms. So now, male is not neutral anymore.
It's not
the norm. It's not even neutral. It's not the norm. which is so big. And I think that's a big step. And I think that's why we need to insist on gender-sensitive language even more. Like, let's implement it in schools everywhere.
But this is, I mean, I just want to circle back to what we were saying in the beginning, like talking about femicide and talking about how the state of Serbia treats, the government of Serbia actually treats femicide in this country. It's quite important to actually raise awareness about women's rights and women's issues in order to address quite worrisome data that we have, even if it's unofficial. I still don't believe that it's, not many women that die of femicide. It's quite a number, So, in order to address these issues, we need to start talking about the women, about women as a whole. We have to address certain aspects of their lives in order to understand where they come from, what they deal with, what challenges they have, what their needs and the opportunities are, and so on and so on.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of men and even a lot of women don't even notice the discrimination that they face against.
Because it's normalized.
It's so normalized. It's so, like, we're so used to living in this society that it's like, oh, so what if he told me my skirt is nice? It is. I'm never going to think once again. But it's like those microaggressions against women that like really make me angry, because a lot of women aren't even going to act on it. And when they do speak out about all of these like minor, not really explicit discriminations that they face, they're going to be like, men are going to be like, oh, you're being stupid. Like, you're not, it's not true. That can't harm you because I say so, because I'm a man. I mean, it's just a lot. And also we can now circle back to the whole problem with the media, because when a femicide happens, the way media reports on it is atrocious. I mean, the words that they use, the
details that they explain,
details,
names, information that they share. Yeah. They tell you everything about the victim and, all the little details.
Taking the focus off the victim and putting it on the perpetrator too. They're like, and like declassifying
in a negative way.
Yeah. And like trying to make this femicide thing smaller, trying to like make domestic violence a family drama. Like, what does that mean? Like, that was a headline in the newspaper. A family drama ends in murder. It's not a family drama. It's domestic violence. It's a murder. It's
call the things right names.
Femicide. Call them as they are. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I completely agree with this. And as we mentioned in the beginning, like, media does affect how we think, and the mentality changes around how the media does its job. And it's quite important to have righteous, objective media outlets that are going to report on topics, like independently, in a sense, where they won't depend on the ideology of those who finance them. So it's quite important to have those. And for the, let's kind of, because I believe that this is a topic that definitely can be 2 episodes of the Youth Squad, because I believe that this is something that, I mean, it's not only universal to Serbia. It's not unique to Serbia. It's quite it's quite present in the society as a whole. We had many different, representations of misogyny and of this, sexist culture through Andrew Tate, through, many different people who were spreading quite harmful narratives around women, around different marginalized groups, and different all the groups that are actually quite vocal about the lack of their human rights. It's quite presented, like, it's quite present in the whole world, not only in Serbia. And that's why I believe that this is quite a broad topic that can be talked about for quite some time. But I would just, for the very end, I would like to ask you, like, what is just to finish on a more affirmative note and just to finish it in a more, positive note and tone.
Me being less angry, really angry.
It's completely understandable. I mean, from what we've heard here, it's quite, it's
sad
crazy
situation.
that you're not screaming right now. It's because it's quite dangerous for,
But I don't want to be a hysterical woman.
Yeah, that's another, it's kind of like double-edged sword. You can't win in these situations. And so it's quite, it's quite challenging. You being an activist, you being a human rights activist, an advocate for human rights, that's quite vocal about this topic. It's quite hard, to stay in this topic and not be, frustrated enough, or for it not to take a toll on your mental health and physical health as well, and sometimes even your security and safety. So maybe the topic for the next episode can be, what is the position of the human rights protectors and those who are fighting for human rights in Serbia. But for the very end of this episode, I would like to ask you, what is one thing that has to change in order for positive change to happen in Serbia? If you had to pick one. I know it's hard.
Very ambitiously, I'm going to say the whole legal system, but I cannot say that. I think the little thing that can change is just like the society's attitude and just being open to listening a little more carefully and listening to those people that actually survived those things that they're talking about. So basically, just let's start with society, with people just being more open to listen to the people that are trying to reach them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this was a nice finish. Thank you, Ksenia, for being here. Thank you for talking about this very important topic with us. I hope our listeners enjoyed it. I believe that you will be back for another episode of this talk, because this is, as I mentioned, quite important and broad topic. So, thank you once again for being here. Hope you all enjoyed, and hear you in the next episode.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Youth Squad. My name is Maria. The Youth Squad podcast series is recorded under a small-scale project in the field of youth called Voicehood of Youth, which will cover 4 topics: human rights, gender equality, European multiculturalism, inclusion and diversity, and active participation. The project is implemented within the Erasmus Plus program and is financed by the Swedish National Agency. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure you stay tuned for another episode.